Listening Preview Test. Listen as the directions are read to you.
Directions. This section tests your understanding of conversations and lectures. You will hear each conversation or lecture only once. Your answers should be based on what is stated or implied in the conversations and lectures. You are allowed to take notes as you listen, and you can use these notes to help you answer the questions. In some questions, you will see a headphones icon. This icon tells you that you will hear but not read part of the lecture again. Then you will answer a question about the part of the lecture that you heard. Some questions have special directions that are highlighted. During an actual test, you may not skip questions and come back to them later, so try to answer every question that you hear on this test. On an actual test, there are 2 conversations and 4 lectures. You will have 20 minutes, not counting the time spent listening, in which to complete this section of the test. On this preview test, there is 1 conversation and 3 lectures. Most questions are separated by a 10-second pause. Listen to a conversation between a student and a professor.
Professor Dixon, I'm Brenda Pierce from your Geology 210 class.
Yes, I know. That's a big class, but I do recognize you. As a matter of fact, I noticed you weren't in class yesterday morning. Did you oversleep? That's one of the problems with an 8 o'clock class. I almost overslept myself a couple of times.
No, I didn't oversleep. In fact, I was up at 5 o'clock. One of my roommates had an early flight and I took her to the airport. I thought I'd make it back here in time, but, you know how traffic can be out on Airport Road at that time of day. Anyway, I know you were going to give us some information about our research paper in class today. Do you have a few minutes to fill me in?
Well, a few minutes, I guess. This isn't my regular office hour. I actually just came by my office to pick up a few papers before the faculty meeting.
Okay, well, about the research paper, how long does it have to be?
Well, as I told the class, the paper counts for 30% of your grade. It should be at least 12 pages, but no more than 25. And your bibliography should contain at least 10 reference sources.
Will you be assigning the topic or...
I'm leaving the choice of topic up to you. Of course, it should be related to something we've discussed in class.
I'm interested in writing about earthquakes.
Earthquakes. Well, I don't know, Brenda. That sounds like much too broad a topic for a short research paper.
Oh, well, I plan to get more specific than that. I want to write about using animals to predict earthquakes.
Really? Well, once scientists wondered if perhaps there was some connection between strange behavior in animals and earthquakes, and that that you could use them to predict earthquakes. But there have been a lot of studies on this subject, and so far none of them have shown anything promising.
But I thought there was I saw this show on television about earthquakes, and it said that in China, I think it was, they did predict an earthquake because of the way animals were acting.
Oh, right. You're thinking of the Heqiang earthquake about 30 years ago? Well, that's true. There were snakes coming out of the ground in the middle of winter when they should have been hibernating. And supposedly horses and other animals were acting frightened. And there were other signs too, not just from animals. So the government ordered an evacuation of the area. And in fact, there was an earthquake, so thousands of lives were probably saved.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. That's what I saw on television.
The problem is that, unfortunately, no one's been able to duplicate that kind of result in China or anywhere else. There have been lots of earthquakes since then that haven't been predicted, and there have been a couple of false alarms when cities were evacuated for no reason. And like I said, none of the studies that have been done have shown that animals are any better at predicting earthquakes than people are.
So you don't think that's a very good idea for a topic then, I suppose?
I didn't say that. Just because this theory hasn't been proven doesn't mean you couldn't write a perfectly good paper about this topic. on the notion that animals can predict earthquakes. Why not? It could be pretty interesting. But to do a good job, you'll need to look at some serious studies in the scientific journals, not just some pop science articles in newspapers, and you can't get your information from television shows.
You really think it might make a good paper? Well, then, I think if I can get enough information from the library or the internet.
Okay, why don't you see what you can find? Oh, I forgot to mention, you'll need to write up a formal proposal for your paper and work up a preliminary bibliography and hand it in to me a week from tomorrow. I'll need to approve it before you get started. Now, if you'll excuse me, Brenda, I've got to get to that faculty meeting.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you. Question 1. What is this conversation mainly about? Question 2. Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question.
Professor Dixon, I'm Brenda Pierce from your Geology 210 class.
What can be inferred about the student? Question 3. What assumption does the professor make about the student? Question 4. How did the student first get information about the topic she wants to write about? Question 5. What is the professor's attitude toward the topic that the student wants to write about? Now listen to a lecture in a biology class.
Okay, everyone. If you remember, on Wednesday, we talked about the general concept of biomes. So, just to review, biomes are large zones, big sections of the planet that have similar conditions and have the same kinds of plants and animals. Last class, we talked about the tundra, remember? This is a strip of land in the far, far north. We said the tundra consists mainly of open, marshy plains with no trees, just some low shrubs. So, okay. Today, we're going to continue our tour of the world's biomes. The next biome you come to, as you head south from the tundra, is the taiga. That's spelled T-A-I-G-A, taiga. It's also called the boreal forest. The taiga is the largest of all the world's biomes. About 25% of all the world's forests are found in the taiga. Now, the word taiga means marshy evergreen forest. It comes from the Russian language, and that's not too surprising, really, because there are huge, really enormous stretches of taiga in Russia. But taiga isn't just found in Russia. Like the tundra, the taiga is a more or less continuous belt that circles the North Pole, running through Russia, Scandinavia, Canada, Alaska. Most of this land it used to be covered by glaciers, and these glaciers left deep gouges and depressions in the land. And not surprisingly, these filled up with water, with melted snow. So you have lots of lakes and ponds and marshes in the taiga. Within the taiga itself, you'll find 3 subzones. The first of these you come to as you're going south is called open forest. The only trees here are needle-leaf trees. You know, evergreen trees, what we call coniferous trees. These trees tend to be small and far apart. This is basically tundra. It looks like tundra, but with a few small trees. Next, you come to what's called closed forest, with bigger needle-leaf trees growing closer together. This feels more like a real forest. This subzone, well, if you like variety, you're not going to feel happy here. You can travel for miles and see only half a dozen species of trees. In a few days, we'll be talking about the tropical rainforest. Now that's where you'll see variety. Okay, finally you come to the mixed zone. The trees are bigger still here, and you'll start seeing some broad-leafed trees, deciduous trees. You'll see larch, aspen, especially along rivers and creeks, in addition to needle-leaf trees. So this subzone feels a bit more like the temperate forests we're used to. So what are conditions like in the taiga? Well, to start with, you've got to understand that it's cold there. I mean, very cold. Summers are short, winters long. So the organisms that call the taiga home have to be well adapted to cold. The trees in the taiga, as I already said, are coniferous trees like the pine, fir, and spruce. And these trees, they've adapted to cold weather. How? Well, for one thing, they never lose their leaves. They're evergreen, right? Always green. So in the spring, they don't have to waste time, don't have to waste energy growing new leaves. They're ready to start photosynthesizing right away. And then, for another thing, these trees are conical, shaped like cones, aren't they? This means that snow doesn't accumulate too much on the branches. It just slides off. And so, well, that means their branches don't break under the weight of the snow. And even their color, that dark, dark green, it's useful because it absorbs the sun's heat. What about the animals that live up there? You remember I said there were lots of marshes and lakes. These watery places make wonderful breeding grounds for insects. So naturally, in the summer, you get lots of insects. And insects attract birds, right? Plenty of birds migrate to the taiga in the summer to feast on insects. Lots of the mammals that live in the taiga migrate to warmer climates once cold weather sets in. But there are some year-round residents. Among the predators, the animals that hunt other animals, there are Arctic foxes, wolves, bears, martens, and ermines. There's one thing all these predators have in common. The ones that live there all year round, they all have thick, warm fur coats, don't they? This heavy fur keeps them toasty in the winter. Of course, on the downside, it makes them desirable to hunters and trappers. Some of these predators survive the winter by hibernating, by sleeping right through it. Bears, for example. And some change colors. You've heard of the ermine, right? In the summer, the ermine is dark brown, but in the winter it turns white. That makes it hard to spot, so it can sneak up on its prey. Then, what sorts of herbivores live up there? What do the predators eat to stay alive? There's the moose, of course. But only young moose are at risk of being attacked. The adult moose is the biggest, strongest animal found in the taiga, so a predator would have to be feeling pretty desperate to take on one of these. Mostly predators hunt smaller prey, like snowshoe rabbits, voles, lemmings. Okay, the next biome we come to is the temperate forest, where broadleaf trees like, maples and oaks are most common. But before we get to this, I'd like to give you an opportunity to ask me some questions about the taiga.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you. Question 6. What does the professor say about the word taiga? Question 7. Why does the speaker say this?
This subzone, well, if you like variety, you're not going to feel happy here. You can travel for miles and see only half a dozen species of trees. In a few days, we'll be talking about the tropical rainforest. Now that's where you'll see variety.
Question 8. The professor discussed 3 subzones of the taiga. Match each subzone with its characteristic. Question 9. When discussing needle-leaf trees, which of these adaptations to cold weather does the professor mention? Question 10. What characteristic do all of the predators of the taiga have in common? Question 11. What does the professor imply about moose? Listen to a discussion in the first class of a business course.
Well, I guess everyone's here, huh? We may as well get started. Good morning, all. I'm Professor Robert Speed, and I'd like to welcome you to the Foundations of Business class. The purpose of this class is really to acquaint you with the various tools, techniques you'll be using in most of your business courses. And we'll concentrate especially on the case study method, because you'll be using that in most of the business classes you take.
The case study method, Professor? Is that a new method of teaching business?
Oh, no. I mean, it may seem new to you. But no, in fact, a professor named Christopher Longdell introduced this system at Harvard University back around the 1870s. And he always insisted that it was based on a system used by Chinese philosophers thousands of years ago.
So then it's been used in business schools ever since when did you say, the 1870s?
Well, you see, Professor Longdell, he in fact taught in the law school at Harvard, not in the business school. So the case method it was first used to train law students. Then a couple of years after that, they started using it at Columbia University, at the law school there. It wasn't until, when was it? Probably about 1910, 1912, something like that it was first used at Harvard Business School.
Then it's used in other fields besides law and business?
Oh, sure. Over the years, it's been used in all sorts of disciplines. For example, my wife, she teaches over at the School of Education. She uses cases to train teachers.
Professor Speed, I get that case study has been around a while, but I still don't quite understand why do we study cases exactly?
Okay, before the case method was introduced, the study of law and business was very abstract, theoretical. It was just lectures about theory. Professor Longdell thought, and a lot of educators think, that really the best way to learn law, business, any discipline you can think of, is by studying actual situations and analyzing these situations and learning to make decisions.
That makes sense, but, what does a case look like exactly? What does
a case look like? Well, cases are basically descriptions of let me stress that, of real business situations, chunks of reality from the business world. So you get typically 10 to 20 pages of text that describe the problem, some problem that a real business actually faced. And then there will be another 5 to 10 pages of what are called exhibits.
Exhibits? What are those?
Exhibits? Those are documents, statistical documents that explain the situation. They might be, spreadsheets, sales reports, marketing projections, anything like that. But as I said, at the center of every case, at the core of every case, is a problem that you have to solve. So you have to analyze the situation, the data, and sometimes you'll see you don't have enough data to work with, and you might have to collect more, say from the internet. Then you have to make decisions about how to solve these problems.
So that's why we study cases? I mean, because managers need to be able to make decisions and solve problems?
Exactly. Well, that's a big part of it anyway. And doing this, solving the problem, usually involves role-playing, taking on the roles of decision-makers at the firm. One member of the group might play the chief executive officer, one the chief financial officer, and so on. And you might have a business meeting to decide how your business should solve its problem. Your company might, say, be facing a cash shortage and thinking about selling off one division of the company. So your group has to decide if this is the best way to handle the problem.
So we work in groups then?
Usually in groups of 4 or 5. That's the beauty of this method. It teaches teamwork and cooperation.
And then what? How do you decide on a grade for us?
You give a presentation, an oral presentation, and you explain to the whole class what decision you made and what recommendations you'd make, and then you write a report as well. You get a grade, a group grade, on the presentation and the report.
Professor, is this the only way we'll be studying business, by using cases?
Oh no, it's just one important way. Some classes are lecture classes, and some are a combination of lectures and case studies, and in some classes you'll also use computer simulations. We have this software called World Marketplace, and using this program, your group starts up your own global corporation and tries to make a profit. It's actually a lot of fun.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you. Question 12. Professor Speed mentions several stages in the history of the case method. Put these steps in the proper order. Question 13. What does Professor Speed say about exhibits? Question 14. What does the professor mean when he says this?
It wasn't until, when was it? Probably about 1910, 1912, something like that it was first used at Harvard Business School.
Question 15. Why does Professor Speed mention his wife? Question 16. In this lecture, the professor describes the process of the case study method. Indicate whether each of the following is a step in the process. Question 17. Which of the following reasons does the professor give for using the case study method? Listen to a student giving a presentation in an astronomy class.
Well, hi, everyone. Monday, we heard Dawn tell us about the sun, and Lisa talk about Mercury, the planet closest to the sun. My report, what I'm talking about is the next planet, the second planet, Venus. Okay, to start off, I'm going to tell you what they used to think about Venus. First off, back in the really ancient days, people thought Venus was a star, not a planet. And, well, actually, You know how you can see Venus in the early morning and in the evening? Well, so they thought it was two stars. Phosphorus, that was the morning star, and, Hesperus, the evening star. And then once they figured out it was just one planet, they named it Venus after the goddess of love. I don't really know why, though. And then later people started studying Venus through a telescope, and they found out it was covered by clouds. Not partly covered by clouds, like Earth, but completely wrapped up in clouds. And since it was closer to the sun than Earth, people imagined it was warm there, like it is in the tropics. In the 19th century, there was this belief, a lot of people believed for some reason, that there were these creatures on Venus who were superior to us. Almost perfect beings, like angels or something. Then, in the early part of the 20th century, people imagined that, under the clouds, there were swamps and jungles and monsters. There was this guy, this author, Edgar Rice Burroughs. He also wrote the Tarzan books, and he wrote books in the 1930s about, well, the series was called Carson of Venus, and it was about some explorer from Earth having wild adventures and fighting monsters in the jungles. This idea of a warm Venus lasted until the 1950s. Okay, so Venus is the brightest object in the sky, except for the sun and the moon, and except for the moon, it comes closer to the Earth than any other planet, a lot closer than Mars, the fourth planet. One of the articles I read about Venus said that Venus is Earth's sister. Earth's twin, I guess it said. That's because Venus is about the same size as Earth, and it's made out of the same basic materials. And Earth and Venus are about the same age. They were formed about the same time. But really, we know nowadays that Earth and Venus are not really much like twins. For one thing, the air, the atmosphere of Venus, is made out of carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid. Not very nice stuff to breathe. And it's really thick, the atmosphere is. It's so thick, it's like being at the bottom of an ocean on Earth. So if astronauts ever went there, they'd have to have something like a diving bell to keep them from getting crushed. And they need really good air conditioning too, because it's really hot down there. Not warm the way people used to think. All those clouds hold in the sun's heat, you see? It's hotter than an oven, hot enough to melt lead, too hot to have any liquid water. So guess what that means? No jungles, no swamps, and no weird creatures. Okay, now here's a really strange fact about Venus. It takes Venus only 225 Earth days to go around the sun, as opposed to the Earth, which of course takes 365 days, what we call a year. But Venus turns around on its axis really slowly. Really slowly. It takes 243 Earth days to spin around completely. The Earth takes, you guessed it, 24 hours. This means that a day on Venus is longer than a year on Venus. In fact, a day on Venus is longer than on any planet in the solar system. Longer even than on those big gas planets like Jupiter. And here's something else weird. All the planets of the solar system turn on their axis in the same direction as they orbit the sun. All, except Venus, of course. It has what's called a retrograde spin. Now, there have been quite a few space probes that have gone to Venus, so I'm only going to mention a few of them. The most important ones. I guess, one of the most important was called Magellan. Magellan was launched in 1990 and spent 4 years in orbit around Venus. It used, radar, I guess, to map the planet, and it found out that there were all these volcanoes on Venus, just like there are on Earth. The first one to go there, the first probe to go there successfully, was Mariner 2 in 1962. Mariner 1 was supposed to go there, but it blew up. There was one. It was launched by the Soviet Union back in the, let me find it. Hang on, no. Here it is. Venera 4 in 1967. And it dropped instruments onto the surface. They only lasted a few seconds because of the conditions, the heat and all, but This probe showed us how really hot it was. Then there was this one called Venus Pioneer 2 in 1978. That was the one that found out that the atmosphere of Venus is made of carbon dioxide, mostly. And, well, as I said, there were a lot of other ones, too. Well, that's pretty much it. That's about all I have to say about Venus, unless you have some questions.
Charlie?
Yes, Professor?
First, I just want to say good job on your presentation, Charlie. It was very interesting. And then, well, I just want to add this. You said you weren't sure why the planet Venus was named after the goddess of love. It's true, Venus was the goddess of love, but she was also the goddess of beauty. And, well, anyone who's ever seen Venus early in the morning or in the evening knows it's a beautiful sight.
Okay, so there you have it, everyone. A mystery solved. Thanks, Professor. Well, I don't have anything to add, so unless anyone has any questions... No? Well, Caroline will be giving the next report, which is about the third planet, and since we all live here, that should be pretty interesting.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you. Question 18. How does the speaker introduce the topic of Venus? Question 19. According to the speaker, which of the following were once common beliefs about Venus? Question 20. In this presentation, the speaker discusses some similarities between Earth and Venus and some of the differences between the two planets. Indicate which of the following is a similarity and which is a difference. Question 21. Which of the following is not true about the length of a day on Venus? Question 22. In what order were these space probes sent to Venus? Question 23. It can be inferred that the topic of the next student presentation will be about which of the following?
This is the end of the listening Lesson 9, Main Topic and Main Purpose Questions. Sample item.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a professor.
Professor Dixon, I'm Brenda Pierce from your Geology 210 class.
Yes, I know. That's a big class, but I do recognize you. As a matter of fact, I noticed you weren't in class yesterday morning. Did you oversleep? That's one of the problems with an 8 o'clock class. I almost overslept myself a couple of times.
Oh, no, I didn't oversleep. In fact, I was up at 5 o'clock. One of my roommates had an early flight and I took her to the airport. I thought I'd make it back here in time, but, well, you know how traffic can be out on Airport Road at that time of day. Anyway, I know you were going to tell us, give us some information about our research paper in class today. Do you have a few minutes to fill me in?
Well, a few minutes, I guess. This isn't my regular office hour. I actually just came by my office to pick up a few papers before the faculty meeting.
Okay, well, about the research paper, how long does it have to be?
Well, as I told the class, the paper counts for 30% of your grade. It should be at least 12 pages, but no more than 25. And your bibliography should contain at least 10 reference sources.
Will you be assigning the topic or...
I'm leaving the choice of topic up to you. Of course, it should be related to something we've discussed in class.
I'm interested in writing about earthquakes.
Earthquakes. Well, I don't know, Brenda. That sounds like much too broad a topic for a short research paper.
Oh, well, I plan to get more specific than that. I want to write about using animals to predict earthquakes.
Really? Well, once scientists wondered if perhaps there was some connection between strange behavior in animals and earthquakes, and that you could use them to predict earthquakes. But there have been a lot of studies on this subject, and so far none of them have shown anything promising.
But I thought there was this. I saw this show on television about earthquakes, and it said that in China, I think it was, they did predict an earthquake because of the way animals were acting.
Oh, right. You're thinking of the Heecheng earthquake about 30 years ago? Well, that's true. There were snakes coming out of the ground in the middle of winter when they should have been hibernating. And supposedly horses and other animals were acting frightened. And there were other signs too, not just from animals. So the government ordered an evacuation of the area. And in fact, there was an earthquake, so thousands of lives were probably saved.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. That's what I saw on television.
The problem is that, unfortunately, no one's been able to duplicate that kind of result in China or anywhere else. There have been lots of earthquakes since then that haven't been predicted, and there have been a couple of false alarms when cities were evacuated for no reason. And like I said, none of the studies that have been done have shown that animals are any better at predicting earthquakes than people are.
So you don't think that's a very good idea for a topic then, I suppose?
I didn't say that. Just because this theory hasn't been proven doesn't mean you couldn't write a perfectly good paper about this topic on the notion that animals can predict earthquakes. Why not? It could be pretty interesting. But to do a good job, you'll need to look at some serious studies in the scientific journals, not just some pop science articles in newspapers, and you can't get your information from television shows.
You really think it might make a good paper? Well, then, I think if I can get enough information from the library or the internet.
Okay, why don't you see what you can find? Oh, I forgot to mention, you'll need to write up a formal proposal for your paper and work up a preliminary bibliography and hand it in to me a week from tomorrow. I'll need to approve it before you get started. Now, if you'll excuse me, Brenda, I've got to get to that faculty meeting.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you. Question 1. What is this conversation mainly about?
For the listening exercises in the complete guide, the directions will not be read aloud on the tape. Therefore, you must read the directions for each exercise and make sure you understand them before you start the audio program. Exercise 9.1.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a librarian.
Hi, I'm in Professor Quinn's political science class. In class today, she said that she'd put a journal on reserve. We're supposed to read an article from that journal?
Okay, well, you're in the right place. This is the reserve desk.
Oh, good. I've never checked out reserved materials before. So, what do I need? Do I need a library card, or what do I have to do?
You have your student ID card with you, right?
I think I do. I think it's in my backpack here.
Okay, well, all you really need to do is leave your student ID here with me, sign this form, and the journal is all yours for, for 2 hours anyway.
2 hours? That's all the time I get?
Well, when instructors put materials on reserve, they set a time limit on how long you can use them, just so all the students in your class can get a chance to read them.
I don't know how long the article is, but I guess I can finish it in 2 hours.
And one more thing, you You'll have to read the article in the library. You're not allowed to check reserve material out of the library or to take it out of the building.
Oh, well, then maybe I should go back to my dorm and get some dinner before I sit down and read this.
That's fine, but I can't guarantee the article will be available right away when you come back. Some other student from your class might be using it.
Well, I don't know. I guess I'll just have to take my chances.
Now get ready to answer the question. You may use your notes to help you. Question 1. What is the main topic of this conversation? Listen to a conversation between two students.
Tina, hey, how are you?
Hi, Michael. Hey, how was your summer vacation?
Oh, not too bad. Mostly I was working. How about you? I kind of remember you saying that... Weren't you going to Europe? How was that?
Oh, that fell through. I was going to travel with my roommate, and she changed her mind about going, so... Well, my parents own a furniture store, and so instead, I was going to work there. But then, well, you know Professor Grant?
Oh, from the archaeology department. Sure. Well, I've heard of her anyway.
Well, I got a call from her just before the end of the spring semester. She was planning to do this dig in Mexico. So she calls me up and asks if I'd like to be a volunteer, and, you know, it's always been a dream of mine to be an archaeologist, so I jumped at the chance.
So, how was it? I mean, was it a good dig?
Do you mean, did we find any artifacts? No, it was supposed to be a very promising site, but it turned out to be a complete bust. We didn't find anything. Not even one single piece of broken pottery. Nothing, just sand.
Wow, that must have been pretty disappointing.
No, not really. Oh, sure, I mean, I would have liked to have made some amazing discovery. But, well, I still learned a lot about archaeological techniques, you know, and I really enjoyed getting to know the other people on the dig, and it was fun.
Now get ready to answer the question. You may use your notes to help you. Question 2. What is the main subject of the speaker's conversation? Listen to a conversation between a student and an administrator.
Yes, come in.
Miss Kirchner?
Yes.
I'm, Mark Covelli. I live over in Quincy House.
Yes, so what can I do for you, Mark?
The woman who's in charge of the cafeteria over at Quincy. I talked to her this morning, you see, and, well, she told me that I would have to talk to you.
Okay, talk to me about...
Okay, well, I'd like to. You see, back at the beginning of the semester, my parents signed me up for Meal Plan 1. You know, the plan where you get 3 meals a day?
Okay.
So, well, I've decided it was kind of a waste of their money because, I mean, I almost never eat 3 meals there in a day. 3 days a week I have early classes, and I don't have time to eat breakfast at all. And even on days when I do eat breakfast there, I just have coffee and some yogurt. So, well, I could do that in my room.
So what you're saying is you'd like to be on Meal Plan 2?
Yeah, I guess. Whatever you call the plan where you only eat 2 meals a day at the dorm.
That's Plan 2. We usually don't make that kind of switch in the middle of a semester. You know, if I do approve this, we'd have to make the refund directly to your parents. And it could only be a partial refund, since you've been on Plan 1 for a month already.
Oh, sure, I understand that. I just hate to waste my parents' money.
Now get ready to answer the question. You may use your notes to help you. Question 3. Why does Mark Covelli want to speak to Ms. Kirchner? Now get ready to listen to a conversation between two students.
Hey, Larry, how are you? What are you up to this weekend?
Oh, my friends and I are going to be working on our car, the Sunflower 2.
Wait, you have a car called the Sunflower?
Yeah, the Sunflower 2. Well, it's not a regular car. It's a solar-powered car.
Really? That's why you call it the Sunflower, then. Oh, wait, are you entering it in that race next month, the
Solar Derby, yeah. It's sponsored by the engineering department.
I read a little about that in the campus paper. I'm sorry, but the idea of racing solar cars, it just sounds a little weird.
I guess, but there are lots of races for solar-powered cars. One of the most famous ones is in Australia. They race all the way from the south coast of Australia to the north coast.
But your race, it's not anywhere near that long, right?
No, no. Our race is only 20 miles long. We entered the Sunflower 1 in it last year, and...
And did you win?
Well, no. No, we didn't actually win. In fact, we didn't even finish last year. We got off to a good start, but then we had a major breakdown. But since then, we've made a lot of improvements to the Sunflower 2, and, well, I think we have a pretty good chance this year of, well, if not winning, of finishing at least in the top 3.
Now get ready to answer the question. You may use your notes to help you. Question 4. What are these two people mainly discussing? Listen to a conversation between two students.
So, Rob, what classes are you taking next semester?
Let's see. I'm taking the second semester of statistics, calculus, German, and... Oh, I signed up for a class in the art department, a photography class.
Oh, who with?
Let me think. I think it's Lyons.
Lyons? I don't think... Oh, you must mean Professor Lyle, Martha Lyle. She's my advisor, and I've taken a couple classes from her. She's just great. She's not only a terrific photographer, but she's also just a wonderful teacher. She can take one look at what you're working on and tell you just what you need to do to take a better photograph. I mean, I learned so much about photography from her, and not only about taking color photographs, but also black and white, which I'd never done before. She only takes black and white photos herself, you know. So what kinds of photos did you show her?
What do you mean?
When you got permission to take her class, what kind of photos did you show her? You had to show her your portfolio, didn't you?
No, I just registered for her class. The registrar didn't tell me I needed permission.
Well, for any of those advanced classes, if you're not an art major or if you haven't taken any other photography classes, you have to get the professor's permission, and usually that involves showing your portfolio.
Oh, see? They didn't tell me that when I registered.
Well, I think it says so in the course catalog, but you can always sign up for an introductory level photography class. You wouldn't need the instructor's permission to do that.
No, I just don't consider myself not a complete beginner anyway. I took photos for my school newspaper when I was in high school. Not just news photos, but kind of artistic photos too. You know, I could show her those. I'd really like to take her class. From what you said about her, I think I could learn a lot.
Now get ready to answer the question. You may use your notes to help you. Question 5. What is the main topic of this conversation?